Good morning. I'm Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich. My pronouns are they, them, and I serve this congregation as its minister here at the Unitarian Society of New Haven. Welcome to our service. We're so glad you're joining us today. We have made a practice of letting people know about what's going on in the world of our social justice actions. And today I would like to welcome Sharon McBlain from the Anti-Racism Task Force to tell us about what they're up to.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Am I? Okay, yes. All right. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm the co-chair of the Anti-Racism Task Force and involved in the Waverly USNH partnership. First, a stark reminder of the depth of white racism. The following quote, abridged by me, is found in ex-slave Robert Anderson's little-known autobiography titled From Slavery to Affluence. Here are Mr. Anderson's words. The earliest impressions that I can now recall are of the slave quarters. Little one-room log huts with the slaves housed in those huts pretty much as pigs in a pen. One family to a room, and sometimes two or three. There were no luxuries, no conveniences, and no privacy. These conditions were so, not because my master was especially cruel, for he was not. It was merely the custom of the times, when it was thought that the colored race needed no more care than a hog or a cow, and got considerably less than a horse. So what values are important to me and how do they affect how I spend my time and whom I spend it with? Family, friendship, fairness, and a curiosity about life are of central importance to me. USNH is my chosen religious community. I became a Unitarian in the early 70s while still living in Iowa. The Des Moines School Board, trying to figure out how to do as little as possible to desegregate their schools, had set up a couple of high-quality magnet elementary schools in poor inner-city neighborhoods and hoped that enough white parents would decide to send their children to those schools. Phil and I enrolled our 8-year-old daughter in King Magnet School. She attended for 2 years before the city of Des Moines had to face the fact their schools were still too segregated since only a few white parents were voluntarily sending their children. The magnet schools were paired with nearby white schools and ceased being special. In 1983, shortly after moving from Iowa to Hamden, I began to attend USNH with the hope of finding and making some friends in a community that values all children and social justice. Shortly after Reverend Kathleen McTeague arrived, an anti-racism task force was created. There have been an ongoing stream of leaders and members since that time. The ART has steadfastly tried to encourage and maintain a commitment to racial justice within USNH and in the wider community. The Sunday Reverend Megan spoke boldly about the fact we all live in a sea of white supremacy and white-centeredness that we as white people seldom even notice, nearly brought me to tears. I am grateful that Reverend Linda Susan has worked to foster a higher level of commitment from all of us at USNH as we work together to become more welcoming and anti-racist. Most recently, our congregation voted to adopt the 8th principle. Last Tuesday, the ART met jointly with the 8th Principle Working Group with the goal of brainstorming, planning, and working together with congregants and leadership. Meetings will be the second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. All are welcome. I like to think that everyone at USNH is automatically on the anti-racist team. Anti-racist talk is easy. Anti-racist action is harder. But what motivates us as white people to become involved and care? I know that I am motivated by what I learned by listening and reading and being part of the lives of others. Winfred Rembert and his wife Patsy have been longtime friends of this congregation. His memoir, Chasing Me to My Grave, an artist memoir of the Jim Crow South, was published shortly after his death last year. Brian Stevenson wrote in his eloquent foreword to the book, Winfred Rembert inherited more than pain, abandonment, abuse, and suffering when he came into this world. He clearly found love, kindness, strength, and a powerful dignity and compassion that shines through his work and inspires us. Winfred's preface begins, writing this book has been a lifelong dream of mine, and ends with, even though I have wanted to tell my story for years, I was afraid to draw attention to what happened in Cuthbert, Georgia during my lifetime and to me. I was worried about whether people would believe or care and whether the real people I name might in some way or other retaliate. I wasn't sure how to talk about my search for my mother's love or the bond I feel for Patsy. But my time in this world is up, so there is no better time. This may be the perfect time. ART and ARE have scheduled Zoom book discussions in February. Watch the newsletter for information. Jesse and others have planned a multi-generational service today as we celebrate the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. A special shout out to Tanisha Drummonds, who shares MLK's birthday and his commitment to racial justice. I'm so glad to share these moments in the present with you.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Society of New Haven. I'm Rich Stockton, a member of the worship committee and your worship associate today. You can refer to me with the pronouns he and him. If you're joining us for the first time, we're so glad you chose to spend this time with us. As you can read in our order of service, we are a diverse, multi-generational faith community that inspires lives of compassion and generosity, nurtures spiritual growth, cultivates transformative connections, and creates a more just world. This is a congregation that believes Black lives matter, that all people are inherently worthy. We believe in the beloved community, one of Martin Luther King's dreams. Unfortunately, because of increased COVID risk, we will not meet in person today, but only by live streaming. And for us in the service, away from the podium, masks are still mandatory inside our building for everyone's safety. For newcomers, you can contact us by email at membership@usnh.org, or you can go to our website, usnh.org, to find out more about us. And one announcement, the Covenantal Relations Committee is having a listening circle on Zoom directly after the service today at 11:30 to 12:30 on the topic, Living with Intention.
Today, our chalice is a birthday candle for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., who would have turned 93 yesterday if he were still alive. We honor him with light and love. We recommit ourselves to fight for justice. Because, as Dr. King himself once said, we may have come on different ships, but we're all the same. But we're all in the same boat now.
Our call to worship this morning is called River Call by Manish Mishra Marzetti. Between rocking the boat and sitting down, between stirring things up and peaceably going along, we find ourselves here in community, each called from many different journeys, many different life paths onto this river road. Some of us are here because the rocking of the boat has been too much tumult, too much uncertainty, too much pain. Some are here with questions about where the boat is going, how best to steer it, where this journey ends. Others are here as lovers of the journey, lovers of life itself. Here in the front, beside, behind, each a passenger, each a captain, doing the best we can. Rest here in your boat with me, the river calls. Listen to how I flow, the sound of life coursing all around you. Let the current hold you. Let the current guide you. The river that gently flows through your soul whispers, "Come, let us worship."
Covenant lies at the center of how Unitarian Universalists gather in community. We are united not by a particular set of beliefs, but by the promises we make about how we will be together, how we will treat each other, and how we will seek to mend relationships when we fall short of our aspirations. Each week, we recite together a brief version of our covenant. I encourage you to read the full covenant on our website. While the following words express our intentions in writing, our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. Please join me now in reciting these words in your order of service. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, and seek humor and joy.
Love knocks and waits for us to hear, to open and invite. Love longs to quiet every fear and seeks to set things right. Love offers life in spite of foes to threaten and condemn. Embracing enemies, love goes the second mile with them. Love comes to heal the broken heart, to ease the troubled mind. Without a word, love bids us start to ask and seek and find. Love knocks and enters at the sound of welcome from within. Love sings and dances all around and feels new life begin.
In his April 1963 letter from a Birmingham jail, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote to a group of white church leaders who had turned against him after his arrest for protesting injustice. But he might as well have been writing to us, for his words still flow straight to the heart today. He wrote, "I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the prophets of the 8th century BC left their villages and carried their 'Thus saith the Lord' far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to the far corners of the Greco-Roman world, so am I compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. You deplore the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, but your statement, I am sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstrations. I am sure that none of you would want to rest content with the superficial kind of social analysis that deals merely with effects and does not grapple with underlying causes. It is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham, but it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the Negro community with no alternative.
Years later, in 2020, Aliyah, an 8th grade student in Bridgeport, Connecticut, read this letter and replied back to Dr. King. Dear Martin, hey, it's me, Aliyah, and to be honest with you, I don't know what to say or how to start off. Well, let me just start off by introducing myself. I am a 14-year-old girl with curly brown to blonde hair and hazel eyes in the sun, but brown eyes without it. I'm a mix of browns, Latino, and a little bit of Cuban. But enough of talking about me. I want to know where you got the strength and courage to stand up towards racism and even go to jail to stop it. That's just whoa. I just want to thank you for what you have done, not only for yourself, but for all African Americans and brown people all around the world. If it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't be here in this school with Latinos, whites, blacks, etc. In fact, I probably wouldn't even exist because of what I'm mixed with. So I just want to take my time and thank you, even though you'll never read this, unless you were right about heaven and can read letters from up there. I just want you to know that I love you, even though I never met you. Well, can I just ask you, how did you survive all of what happened to you during a racist time? It's so crazy that girls who were white couldn't touch girls who were black. That is truly upsetting, and the same towards boys. Wow, that must have been terrifying and upsetting, especially now that people are free, kind of. You and your family and everyone else had to go through all of that, and you sacrificed your life so we could be free. If you could read this, I want you to know that we love you so much and that we thank you, we hope for the best, and rest well, Dr. King.
I now invite you to join me in holding in our hearts the joy and sorrow of those in our community, closing your eyes and going inward if you are comfortable doing so. Some of our joys shine more brightly as others reflect our delight, and some of our burdens are made lighter as others help us carry them. We are all thankful today that the hostages in Texas have been released. On this frigid weekend, we remember all those who can't get enough warmth. Let's support organizations like Columbus House that work to get people warm and put a little joy back in their lives. It is with great love, and not to mention a tear or two, that we wish Jennifer Russenberger, USNH's 14-year child care provider, all the best in her new job adventure. Thank you so much, Jen, for compassionately teaching and caring for so many USNH young people all these years. You're the best, and we will never forget you. And for all the joys and sorrows, both large and small, both spoken and unspoken, we bear witness, and we give thanks for this community of care. Amen.
I invite you into a spirit of meditation, prayer, or contemplation of ultimate things. In the voice of the river, we hear the past burbling up in the present as it flows into the future. Those currents guide us today in our own troubled times. They offer us hope, a beacon of possibility attainable. The river calls to us to find our way, even when it twists and turns and feels like cutting into rock is the only way forward. Let us share together some moments of silence.
After completion of protest marches in Selma, Alabama, Martin Luther King made a speech on the steps of the state capitol. This is part of that speech, which for me rings true today as it did then, now more as much as ever before. Here are King's words. Today, I want to tell the city of Selma. Today, I want to say to the state of Alabama. Today, I want to say to the people of America and the nations of the world that we are not about to turn around. We are on the move now. Yes, we're on the move and no wave of racism can stop us. We're on the move now. The burning of our churches will not deter us. The bombing of our homes will not dissuade us. We are on the move now. The beating and killing of our clergymen and young people will not divert us. We are on the move now. The wanton release of their known murderers would not discourage us. We are on the move now. Like an idea whose time has come, not even the marching of mighty armies can halt us. We are moving to the land of freedom. Let us therefore continue our triumphant march to the realization of the American dream. Let us march on segregated housing until every ghetto or social and economic depression dissolves and Negroes and whites live side by side in decent, safe, and sanitary housing. Let us march on segregated schools until every vestige of segregated and inferior education becomes a thing of the past, and Negroes and whites study side by side in the socially healing context of the classroom. Let us march on poverty until no American parent has to skip a meal so that their children may eat. March on poverty until no starved man walks the streets of our cities and towns in search of jobs that do not exist. Let us march on poverty until wrinkled stomachs in Mississippi are filled and the idle industries of Appalachia are realized and revitalized and broken lives in sweltering ghettos are mended and remolded. Let us march on ballot boxes. March on ballot boxes until race baiters disappear from the political arena. Let us march on ballot boxes until the salient misdeeds of bloodthirsty mobs will be transformed into the calculated good deeds of orderly citizens. Let us march on ballot boxes until the Wallaces of our nation tremble away in silence. Let us march on ballot boxes until we send to our city councils, state legislatures, and the United States Congress men who will not fear to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God. Let us march on ballot boxes until brotherhood becomes more than a meaningless word in an opening prayer, but the order of the day on every legislative agenda. Let us march on ballot boxes until all over Alabama, God's children will be able to walk the earth in decency and honor.
If Martin Luther King Jr. were alive to celebrate his 93rd birthday, he'd likely still be leading these marches today, for they're still really needed. People still need to march on housing inequality and poverty. We still need to march on the ballot boxes because the work is not done. The right to vote is still under threat. Acclaimed poet Nikki Giovanni heard MLK's speech that day and wrote back in 2019 to Dr. King, to everyone who has ever had their right to vote questioned or impeded, and indeed to all of us with this poem. It's not a hug nor mistletoe at Christmas. It's not a colored egg at Easter, nor a bunny hopping across the meadow. It's a vote. Saying you are a citizen, though it sometimes is chocolate or sometimes vanilla. It can be female or male. It is right or left. I can agree or disagree, but, and this is an important but, I am a citizen. I should be able to vote from prison. I should be able to vote from the battlefield. I should be able to vote when I get a driver's license. I should be able to vote when I can purchase a gun. I must be able to vote if I'm in the hospital. I must be, if I'm in the old folks' home, or if I'm needing a ride to the polling place. I am a citizen. I must be able to vote. Folks were lynched. Folks were shot. Folks' communities were gerrymandered. Folks who believed in the Constitution were lied to, burned out, bought, and sold because they agreed all men and women were created equal. Folks vote to make us free. It's not cookies nor cake, but it's the icing that is so sweet. Good for the folks, good for us, my country, 'tis of thee.
We are grateful for all the good things we have been given. We appreciate the uplifting energy of community. The spirit of generosity fills us, and we want to give back also. There are so many things we can do together that we can't do alone. You may not be able to contribute in person today, but we still need your offering more than ever to support the ministries of this congregation. While you listen to music, you can go to our website, usnh.org, donation plate, or mail to our address, 700 Hartford Turnpike in Hamden, Connecticut, 06517. Be as generous as you are able. Your contributions are gratefully received.
This morning's message for all is actually two different stories. If there are any young people around at home, you might want to call them over at this point. It's two stories, but they're told over a 60-year gap. Reverend Linda Susan is going to tell a story called Sit-In by Andrea Davis Pinkney. And I will tell the story Si Se Puede by Diana Kahn and Francisco Delgado.
February 1st, 1960. We must meet hate with love. These were Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words that got them started. 4 hungry friends, eager to eat. Each took a seat at the Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezell sat quiet and still, with hearts full of hope. Everyone around them got served. At first, they were treated like the hole in the donuts they were trying to order, invisible. This was a sign of the times, whites only.
Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, 60 years later, sleep with the angels, Carlitos, says Mama when she tucks me in. See you in the morning, I say, and close my eyes. While everyone sleeps, my mama goes to work. She rides the bus into downtown LA, where skyscrapers shoot up into the sky. At night, the streets are empty. Mama scrubs the bathroom tiles and polishes the glass windows of the tall office buildings, where she works until they shine like the moon above. She mops the floor, empties the trash, and then takes the bus back home just in time to see me wake up and share breakfast. Then I go to school, and Mama goes to bed.
Back in 1960, the 4 friends at the lunch counter ignored the whites-only sign and refused to leave until they were served. They were offering a new recipe to the restaurant where they sat. It was called integration. It was simple. Combine all the colors of the human rainbow to make sweet justice. For them, integration was better than any chef's special. Integration was finer than homemade cake. Integration was a recipe that would take time. So David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezell sat quiet and still, with hearts full of hope, with Dr. King's words strong and close. Be loving enough to absorb evil. They sat straight and proud and waited. A donut and coffee with cream on the side. That's what they ordered. After sitting and waiting and wanting, a police officer came, but the 4 friends wouldn't leave.
One night, before Mama went to work, she sat me on her lap and she said, "Do you know, Carlitos, I can't take care of you and your abuelita the way I want to. Even though I work as a janitor and clean houses on weekends, I still can't afford abuelita's medicine, and we never get to spend time together. It isn't fair, working so hard and getting paid so little." Today, all the janitors met outside the Union Hall, and they voted to stop working. We're going to strike. We're going to let those offices get dirtier and dirtier until we get the pay raises we deserve. "But Mama, can you even do that?" I asked. "You know, I asked the same question," she said. And all the janitors answered together, "Sí, se puede." Yes, we can. So tomorrow we're going to do it, and Carlitos, we'll need your help. I hugged Mama and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. What kind of help could I, a little kid, give to them?
The police officer didn't know what to do. The students were doing nothing wrong. No crime in sitting, no harm in being quiet, no danger in looking hungry. The officer left the lunch counter without doing anything. The Woolworths man turned off the lights. He announced, "Woolworths is closed." So the customers left, including the 4 friends, who went home to dinner where they were served first. News had already spread about the sit-in. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Iselle got their names in the paper. The next day, February 2nd, 1960, more students showed up at the lunch counter, sitting still for what was right. No reservations needed at Woolworths. The students seated themselves. They were dressed in their best clothes. They were polite and determined. They all ordered the same thing: a donut and coffee with cream on the side. No food came. The waitress reminded them, "Whites only." But those kids wouldn't budge. They didn't move. Until they were served, they refused. All they wanted was some food, a donut and coffee with cream on the side. To pass the time, they read their school books. They wrote in their journals. They finished their homework. They didn't need to read the menu, so they studied for tomorrow's test. What had started at that Woolworths spread faster than a grease fire. There were soon lunch counter protests in Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, and many other southern states. If lunch counters could go from whites only to all welcome, if segregation could turn into integration, if black people and white people could break bread together, then everyone would pass the test. Everybody would score high, A+ with that coffee and cream on the side.
60 years later, the janitors' strike began. Mama and other janitors marched. They held rallies and had lots of meetings. Our phone never seemed to stop ringing. Articles in the newspaper brought people from all over out to Los Angeles to stand with us. I brought the news articles to school and shared them with my class. I told them how my grandpa had also gone on strike from the farm where he worked to get better working conditions and pay. The next night I saw Mama on the TV news. She was making a speech. Hundreds of people were marching behind her. That's when I knew what I could do to help. I would go there too, but with a special surprise. I told my idea to Abuelita and to my teacher, Miss Lopez. Then I talked to my class and asked all the kids to meet after school. We painted signs. I made one in the brightest colors I could find. It said, "I love my mama. She is a janitor."
Many people didn't want that A+ grade. In fact, they didn't want to take the test at all. They began giving the students a big, angry dose of hatred. They poured coffee down their backs, threw milkshakes in their faces, and doused them with pepper, ketchup, and anything else they could find. They yelled at the students, "We don't serve your kind. Go home. Goodbye." The students wanted to respond, but couldn't. They wanted to throw food back, but didn't. Sitting still was so hard. Practicing peace while others showed hatred was tougher than any school test. The protests got bigger and wound up on TV. This made the students more determined than ever to show the world the true meaning of peace. So they sat in silence, with hearts full of hope, with Dr. King's dream true and close. These were the words that kept them going. We must meet violence with nonviolence. Eventually, these sit-ins, along with many others that popped up all over, led President John F. Kennedy to make a speech on June 11th, 1963, urging Americans to treat each other fairly. This became the Civil Rights Act of 1964. On July 2nd, 1964, President Johnson made the act a law. It banned segregation in public places. The hard work and courage of those students paid off. They had taken a bite out of segregation. Now it was time to savor equality.
Or was it? 60 years later, there we were, out on the street with our signs, still trying to send a message of equality. It took 3 long weeks, but finally the strike ended. My mama and the janitors finally got the respect and the pay raises that they deserved. Carlitos, Mama said, I couldn't have done it without you. She hung the sign I made on our living room wall. It's the most beautiful sign in the world, she said. That night, I had a dream. When my mama took the bus to scrub, mop, and polish in the tall glass office buildings that shoot up from the streets, I dreamt that angels came down from past generations, from past stories, stories of justice seekers. And you know what those angels did? They began to sing songs to my mama while she worked. They gently reminded her that love conquers hate. The arc of the universe bends towards justice, and most of all, even when it seems like you can't, sí se puede.
Want freedom of speech, but we all are talking at the same time. You say you want peace, but nobody wants to change their own mind. No, they don't. So it goes on and on and on. Years I say, on and on and on and on and on. What language are your tears? Are your tears? Everybody wants to live the life of kings and queens, but nobody wants to stay and plow the fields. Everybody wants to tell their neighbors how to live, but nobody wants to listen to how they feel. It goes on and on, on and on and on. 1,000 years, 1,000 years I say, on and on. Say right now, is your love enough? Yeah, is your love enough? Is your love enough? Can you love some more? Is your love enough? Yeah, is your love enough? Is your love enough? Well, tell me, can you love some more? It goes on and on, on and on and on. 1,000 years I say, taking the universe in their own hand. Oh yes now, short-circuiting the positive, charging the negative, causing the most unusual circumstances. Every day we rise up in battle that we fight again, hoping that our heart will receive our love to win. Blessed those who speak again, all the words to be a friend, for us to live in this our Garden of Eden. Is your love enough? Yeah, is your love enough? Is your love enough? Can you love some more? Is your love enough? Yeah, is your love enough? Is the love enough? Well, tell me, can you love some more? It goes on and on, on and on and on. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, I say. On and on and on and on and on. With language are your tears, are your fears. What language do you laugh in? What language do you cry in? What language do you dance in? Or make romance in? What language do you love in? Or pray to the above in? What language are your tears? What language are your fears? Believe in the coexistence.
That was me clapping.
Please join us in reciting the words in your order of service to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
In one of the letters that Martin Luther King Jr. wrote, and which we gratefully receive, he delivered an essential message. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Today, here in this sacred space, and out there beyond it, what will we write back to him? How will we seek justice? How will we protect sacred rights like community safety, quality education, and the right to vote? Friends, the next letter is yours to write, yours to manifest. So take out your pens, raise your voices, move yourselves along the arc of the universe, and get to it. Blessings upon you this day and always.